By law, matters occurring in Sichuan must be resolved there. A man with a stern expression questioned the presence of the Shaolin Temple and the Heavenly Merchant Guild from Shandong Province, asking if they were ignoring Sichuan's laws. A woman with blue hair apologized, stating that the Heavenly Merchant Guild had only come to provide medical treatment. She introduced herself as Ryuseowa, the overall representative of the Heavenly Merchant Guild's body treatment clinic, explaining that they had heard many people in the area were suffering from bone and joint ailments. The man with white hair questioned if they intended to interfere in Sichuan's matters, but Ryuseowa stated that the Shaolin Temple had no intention of interfering in Sichuan's affairs. However, he added that they couldn't stand idly by and allow an unnecessary fight to break out, as Shaolin External Hall leader Hyan had come to catch Mu Jin and the rest. The man in the blue outfit was sent flying. The man stated that this time, for the sake of Shaolin's face, they would overlook this. He warned that next time, it wouldn't be so simple, and if fate allowed, they would meet again. The man with black hair acknowledged the Shaolin's reputation, noting they drove back both the Qingqing and Amei sects with their aura alone. He then asked Patriarch Tang to bring Mu Jin and the remaining children to him, but hesitated, saying, regarding monk Mu Jin. A man with brown hair whispered to Lady Seowa that warrior Kang Hyuk asked him to deliver something to her. She questioned who warrior Kang Hyuk was. Lady Seowa read the letter, which stated that he had been traveling with his companions and had many matters to settle, leaving him no time to visit. He believed the traces of his journey would be helpful to both the Shaolin and the Heavenly Merchant Guild. The letter concluded by saying that when the day came that they met again, he would send word in advance. Lady Seowa read the letter, its final words expressing Mu Jin's hope for her safety until they met again. The journey continued, leading them through a vibrant green landscape. The man with brown hair suggested they rest for a while, pointing out that their senior brothers wouldn't be able to follow them right away and the horses must be tired too. One of the men wondered where exactly they were, assuming that since Mu Jin was the one leading the horses, he should know. Mu Jin admitted he hadn't had a chance to look at the map because they had told him to hurry, holding on to take a look. He pointed to Guangxi province on the map, but one of the men admitted he'd never heard of it before. Mu Jin explained that Guangxi was an unorthodox sect region, causing alarm among the group. They were shocked that they entered an unorthodox sect region. Mu Jin reminded them that they were the ones who told him to hurry anywhere, and one of the men stammered that they were scared the elders would chase them. One of the men lamented that if they were caught, they would surely be dead. He apologized, admitting that the truth was that Shaolin showed no mercy. Mu Jin revealed that he had brought them there on purpose. There was someone in Guangxi they needed to recruit as an ally, and they also needed to crush the members of the New Heavens faction along the way. He shrugged, stating that it couldn't be helped, even if it was an unorthodox sect region. He asked what the worst that could happen in broad daylight would be. One of the men agreed, saying that Guangxi was still a place where people lived. He added that running into green forest bandits didn't happen all that often anyway. Suddenly, a group of bandits emerged, their leader sneering at the sight of the monks. He wondered why monks, who should be in a temple, were wandering in their territory, joking that perhaps Buddha had sent them as a gift. The men with Mu Jin were shocked that the bandits appeared so quickly after they mentioned them. The bald bandit introduced himself as Crazed Bear, Meng Rang, the nightmare and terror of Guangxi province. Meng Rang cursed Buddha for letting the monks cross his path, his face contorted with rage. The men who had been traveling with Mu Jin looked on in shock. The man demanded to know the location of the largest green forest stronghold in the region. The response came quickly: the Great Tiger Stronghold, the largest green forest stronghold in Guangxi. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed. The group approached the gates of the Great Tiger Stronghold. As they approached the gates of the Great Tiger Stronghold, a man demanded to know who they were, warning them to leave if they valued their lives. A man declared that they were the Black Bear sect, and they had come to take over the Great Tiger Stronghold that day. Earlier, one of the men was surprised that they were pretending to be green forest bandits. The man explained that it was like hiding a leaf within the forest, and by pretending to be a green forest group, they would not only avoid conflict, but they could also overthrow other green forest groups and save the people of Guangxi. Mu Jin was asked if being a green forest bandit was not bad, but he refused. He declared that he was a proud member of the Great Shaolin Temple and would not pretend to be green forest. The man suggested that Mu Jin could be the leader if he did this, which made the man blush. Just then, a muscular man with a black fur vest roared that he was the Black Bear sect's leader, Bear Fist Destroyer, and demanded that the leader of the Great Tiger Stronghold face him. The men sneered, finding the situation amusing. One of them declared that the insolence of these worms was astounding. Suddenly, a hulking figure with an orange tiger pelt around his neck forced his way forward, demanding that they move. The muscular man glared down at the man in the black fur vest. The man in the black fur vest was taken aback by the newcomer's size. He admitted that he had never heard of this Black Bear sect. The muscular man with the orange tiger pelt around his neck questioned why he should play along with such childish games, implying that the leaders should fight over the ownership of a stronghold. The group of men wielding swords responded with sinister laughter, clarifying that they were Green Forest, and Green Forest only takes. The man in the black fur vest and the muscular man with the orange tiger pelt were suddenly swarmed by the group, who declared that they would be taking lives. The muscular man with the orange tiger pelt was heavily injured, but he still managed to utter that the warriors were wise indeed. The man with dark hair declared that the other had failed to recognize his greatness, and was simply weak. He added that they'd prepared clothes and were ready, asking the chief to say a few words. The man with the tiger pelt cleared his throat, then announced that everyone should listen well. He proclaimed that he was their new leader, Bare Fist Destroyer, as Mu Gung watched on with amusement. The man with dark hair announced that the mission to crush the New Heavens faction had successfully begun. The New Heavens faction was the root of every tragedy, but contrary to what one might expect, their first targets weren't the great Murim clans or major sections. Instead, they targeted the merchant guilds of Murim. Their operation proceeded in absolute secrecy, and before anyone realized what was happening, Murim's most prominent merchant guilds had fallen completely into New Heaven's grasp. From there, New Heavens used each guild to move enormous sums of money and military supplies. To covertly transport those resources, they established a disguised organization. That organization was the North Wind Escort Establishment. That's who they were waiting for now. The man with short brown hair confirmed that was correct, asking if he remembered the group they met back at the Taiji sect, the ones who had the Divine Thief Tombs map. The man with dark hair revealed that he had heard a lot during his time at the Tang clan, including that the North Wind Escort Establishment was tied hand in glove with New Heavens. The man with the tiger pelt simply hummed in response. The man with the tiger pelt asked when they were coming, but the other man replied asking how he should know. The man with short brown hair said that it was boring, but they were letting all the other travelers pass normally. He added that seeing everyone look relieved made it worth it. The Green Forest bandits definitely didn't look pleased. The man with the orange tiger pelt was talking to the man with short brown hair, who was identified as the chief. Just then, a signal arrived from the scouts at the entrance of the forest trail. The scout reported that the North Wind Escort Establishment was approaching. The man with the orange tiger pelt and the man with short brown hair looked in the direction of the incoming caravan. The man with the orange tiger pelt and the man with short brown hair noticed the approaching caravan. The North Wind Escort Establishment approached the Great Tiger Stronghold, ready to make their presence known. The old man with a long white beard introduced himself as Zheng Wansam, chief escort leader of the North Wind Escort Establishment, looking forward to working with him. The man with short brown hair, the man with the orange tiger pelt, and the large man with long black hair stared silently at the caravan. Grandmaster Hyun Guang handed over a pouch, stating that the toll payment included a bit more than the standard rate, but the masked man below wasn't satisfied. He declared that the toll fee had gone up, demanding 10 times the amount. The old man with the long white beard was shocked, realizing that their small escort establishment could never afford that. The masked man responded that there was no helping it, suggesting they offer a tribute instead of the toll. The masked man noticed that one of the wagons reeked of something very rich, and he began to laugh. The masked man scrutinized the group, realizing they were more than ordinary Green Forest rabble. Grandmaster Hyun Guang attempted a surprise attack, but the masked man swiftly dodged. Grandmaster Hyun Guang was shocked that his attack was dodged. The masked man's eyes widened as he recognized the person who had arrived, Mu Jin. The man with black hair and the orange tiger pelt roared in fury. The bandits were caught completely off guard, instantly overwhelmed by the sheer power of the escorts. The man with black hair wearing the tiger pelt looked on in disbelief. He wondered if they were using phantom steps and dark shadow art, realizing they were up against New Heaven's hunting dogs. He apologized to Mu Jin, deciding to leave the fight to him, while he retreated. The man with black hair and the orange tiger pelt roared, demanding to know what they were doing to his brothers. His fist slammed into the ground with devastating force. Bare Fist Destroyer declared that nobody would touch his subordinates. He introduced himself as the Bare Fist Destroyer, chief of the Great Tiger Stronghold, admitting that his clung was fully immersed. The man with short brown hair demanded to know who they were. Grandmaster Hyun Guang, with his long white beard, observed them. He stated that judging by their auras and stances, they were clearly Shaolin monks, but their hands had grown too soft to see what they really were. The muscular man smirked, asking if his identity was really that important right now. He then asked if Grandmaster Hyun Guang was a New Heaven's bastard. Grandmaster Hyun Guang's eyes flashed red with fury, clearly taken aback by the question. The man with short black hair smirked, repeating his question and demanding to know if Grandmaster Hyun Guang was a New Heaven's bastard. Hyun Guang roared, silencing the man with short black hair. He threatened to tear him limb from limb until he confessed how he knew that name, drawing his sword. Grandmaster Hyun Guang let out a furious roar. The man with short black hair remained undeterred, his eyes locked on his opponent. Hyun Guang swung his sword down, but the man with short black hair narrowly dodged the attack. A terrifying sword energy began to emanate from Hyunguang's blade. The man with short black hair prepared himself for the next attack, focusing his energy. Suddenly, the man with short black hair blocked the descending blade with the iron guard. Grandmaster Hyunguang was stunned, wondering how the iron guard could be so durable. The man with short black hair exhaled. His eyes narrowed. The man with short black hair struck with overwhelming power. The man with white hair fell backward defeated. The man with short black hair stood over his fallen opponent, stating that he wasn't that difficult to deal with. The man in the tiger pelt rushed over, asking if Mu Jin was alright and if the opponent was dead. Mu Jin assured him that he had only knocked him unconscious. The man with short black hair wearing a tiger pelt vest declared that they would see what the bandits were hiding. He ordered the wounded to be loaded onto the wagon, as they were heading back to the Great Tiger Stronghold. He added that the North Wind escort establishment's leader looked strong, and even their escorts weren't ordinary. Someone wondered how far Mu Jin's monstrous ability had grown, deciding that it was time to return. They had only found clothes as tribute, so they burned everything, just like Mu Jin had instructed. But something was off. One of the men realized that something had been hidden inside the clothes. It made sense that they would hide it there, as it was the safest place. He could feel an ominous energy leaking from it. The man with short black hair suspected that they were hiding something, but he hadn't expected to find this. It was dragon scale armor, though he couldn't confirm whether it was truly the scale of a dragon. He recognized it as the symbolic possession of the Wolf King, one of New Heaven's 7 captains, and the strongest divine grade armor. He had thought the North Wind escort establishment was transporting something from the underworld faction, but he never imagined it would be something like this. The man with the tiger pelt declared that if they used this properly, they could deal a massive blow to the heavens. He then asked Mu Jin what they should do now, and if they should stay and fight the Northern Fort establishment. Mu Jin grinned, stating that had been the original plan. But with this unexpected item showing up, they needed to change course. Mu Jin declared that they would leave the mountain immediately and head to the Minor Azure sect. The group decided to leave the mountain and head to the Minor Azure sect, but the scene shifts to the Guangxi Black Bear sect. A man with long brown hair stood on a cliff overlooking the village. He was Chung Su, a Wudang sect disciple disguised as a mountain bandit. He stared down at his hands, thinking that the heavens hadn't shown any signs of stopping since that day. He wondered if it was simply a headache from the fatigue of the journey, or the pain of having lost someone precious. Chung Su, the Wudang sect disciple disguised as a mountain bandit, was in a sorrowful mood. Suddenly, he sensed multiple hostile auras approaching. He knew he had to warn everyone, but then he realized that one of the auras felt familiar. It was Dan Chianak, the owner of the North Wind escort establishment, leading a group of men. Dan Chianak was furious, wondering why he hadn't received a signal about the escort goods. He realized that of all times for this to occur, it had to be now. He wondered if the hard-to-find dragon-scale armor was being transported and declared he had to find it, no matter what. Meanwhile, in the forest, 2 figures stood silhouetted against the trees, seemingly surprised by something. Suddenly, the man with dark hair and a red robe was attacked by multiple enemies. The man with the tiger pelt demanded to know who they were. The man with pink hair stated that he had told them these bastards would show up. Under the moonlight, the forest was silent. One of the men questioned if they really thought those escorts would charge in again in broad daylight. He continued that for something so important, there would normally be someone watching over it. They should have known the dragon scale armor was stolen a while ago, but they didn't know who exactly took it. The man with short dark hair questioned if the item they had stolen was really that important. The man with the tiger pelt explained that its owner was far from an average lunatic, and if he found out it was stolen, heads would roll. That was why they had to get it back before that happened, and they'd probably send someone on the level of a commanding head escort. The man with short dark hair asked if this did go the way he said, and the North Wind wouldn't come back. Would it be okay if he was the one who fought their leader? The man with the tiger pelt seemed surprised by the request. He responded that he didn't mind, but he wanted to know why. The man with the tiger pelt felt something was a bit better that day. Suddenly, the man with the tiger pelt was struck from above with immense force. A man with red hair appeared, looking enraged. He yelled that they were idiots for daring to lay their filthy hands on his property, and they had no idea who they were dealing with. The man with red hair continued that the fools were rushing toward their own deaths without even realizing it. The man with the tiger pelt was struck with immense force. Even though he had stepped away with full bravado, he realized his opponent's attacks were faster than he thought. Since he had to hide his true identity, he couldn't use the full Divine Palm Strike. In that case, he decided to apply the energy of the full Divine Palm Strike. He would channel that explosive force into his fist. The man with the tiger pelt knew that he had to aim for an opening after his opponent attacked. He saw his chance and shouted. The man with short green hair intercepted, his fist glowing with power. He unleashed the exploding fist strike. The glowing green fist slammed into the man with purple hair, saliva flying from his mouth as he was sent crashing into the ground. The man with the tiger pelt stood over his fallen opponent, his fist still radiating green energy. He looked up, a smirk playing on his lips. The man with the tiger pelt sat cross-legged, examining his fist. He wondered if he had used the Galai Divine Palm Strike, and if that was the Floating Fist Strike. The man with the tiger pelt stood triumphantly over the fallen bodies of his foes, declaring that of course it had to be awesome, since he was the Bare Fist Destroyer himself. One of his men wondered how long he was going to keep doing that bit. The man with short black hair transformed the Rulai Divine Palm Strike into a fist technique on the spot. He had not only shown flexible thinking, but also created a new skill in one go. He was proud of how much Mu Gung had grown. The man with the tiger pelt called out to Mu Jin, asking if he was alright. Mu Jin recognized the newcomer as Taoist Chung Pu, and asked what brought him here at this late hour. Taoist Chung Pu responded that he should be asking him the same question. He explained that he had sensed hostile individuals appearing, so he came to check on them. Taoist Chung Pu explained he had sensed their auras nearby, and had panicked, rushing over, thinking something might have happened. He admitted that this was a bit embarrassing, as these people were the ones they had been waiting for. The man with the tiger pelt noted their attire, recognizing them as members of the North Wind Escort establishment. He declared that they had already achieved their purpose here. The man asked what he was going to do about the treasure inside the carriage, since they planned to abandon the carriage and depart at sunrise. The man with short black hair declared they wouldn't be using the dragon scale armor, as it would only weigh them down. He stated that from then on, they needed to move quickly, entering the world empty-handed and leaving the same way. He reasoned that if they thought of the treasure as the price of their lives, it was cheap. By dispersing their attention, he explained, they could at least buy a little time from New Heaven's pursuit. The image showed the Wolf Fang stronghold. A man with short brown hair and a muscular back stood in a room with red lighting, and someone asked if he was saying the dragon scale armor was stolen. Another man with purple hair pulled back in a bun was sweating profusely, explaining that they were currently scouring all of Guangxi province. The man with short brown hair turned slightly, commenting on how utterly troublesome this was. He lamented that the chess piece he planned on getting had run away, the Cloud Fragrance Hall master had died, and now the dragon scale armor was lost. He wondered how he was only surrounded by incompetent people. The man with purple hair insisted that they would mobilize every man they had and find it without fail. Another man with pink hair thought to himself that since he had spoken, it was about time they started moving. The man with pink hair was furious, calling them little rats and declaring he would mince the Wolf King, New Heaven's 7 captains, Geijiang Universe Next Generation's top 10 martial masters to bits. If you're listening right now, help me prove something wrong. My mom told me I should stop reading and doing these recaps and that it was a waste of time. But I know you guys are different. If you like these recaps, please subscribe and let's prove her wrong. The group had arrived at their destination, the man with the map confirming their location. From their vantage point, they could see Guangxi province, Guilin stretched out before them. The man with the map warned that things would get complicated from here on out. He explained that one of the reasons they had come to Guangxi province was to wipe out the New Heavens forces, a goal which he believed they had successfully accomplished. Now, their only remaining objective was to bring in 2 people who should be in the Minor Azure sect. The problem was that to get to the Minor Azure sect, they would have to pass through Guilin. The man with short brown hair stated that the truth was, Guilin was no ordinary city. He explained that it was the territory of Haiyan Gangdang, one of the 10 great martial masters in the world, and also one of New Heaven's main strongholds, a city that would later become the largest slave market in the Central Plains, a truly wretched city. The man with short black hair thought a city ruled by the unorthodox sect would feel different, but on the surface, it didn't seem much different from any other city. The man with short brown hair asked him just what kind of place he thought it was. The man with short black hair figured it'd be a city where the unorthodox types stirred up trouble everywhere, which sounded fun to him. The man with short brown hair seemed to disagree, commenting that wherever people lived, it was all the same. The man with short brown hair noticed something was wrong and asked if the kid was okay and if he was hurt. The child looked up, terrified, and pleaded for someone to save him, calling out for his mom and dad. The man with short black hair felt something was off about this situation. He heard the man thanking them for their help. The bald man in tan clothing claimed the child was his son, explaining that he had scolded him, causing him to run off. He said that thanks to the young folks, he was spared the trouble of catching him himself. The bald man told the child that he would stop scolding him, so they could go home. He reached out to grab the child, but the man with short black hair stopped him. The man with short black hair stared intently, asking if he was really the child's father. The man with short dark hair warned that they should have just walked away. One of the men questioned who the punks who ran were. The man with short dark hair told them to get their hands off him, get out of Guilin, and stop sticking their noses into other people's business. The child exclaimed that this was exactly the kind of city Mu Kyung was imagining. As the grip tightened, the man screamed in agony. If they were doing bad things so openly, it would make things easier. The man with short dark hair told them to restrain him, stating he'd rather look at what they wanted to know. The man with the tiger pelt cried out that his arm was going to break, asking if that was fine with Mu Jin. Mu Jin, with his arms crossed, responded indifferently. He said if they were going to do it anyway, why even ask and to do whatever they wanted. The man lay on the ground, clearly heavily injured. A sword lay next to him, as another man stood over him in the background. The man on the ground gasped for air, tears streaming down his face. He begged for mercy, promising to tell them everything. He stammered that they were a merchant group operating in Gilin. Mu Jin scoffed, suggesting he still had the strength to lie. Mu Jin slammed the wooden bar down on the man's face, demanding he stop trying to hide information and talk. The man on the ground gasped, tears streaming down his face as Mu Jin pressed him for more information, asking if there were other kids involved. Mu Jin leaned in closer, his eyes narrowed as he demanded to know the location of their base. The man on the ground finally relented, revealing that their base was located in the Gilin Merchant Guild Annex building. Mu Jin stared down at the bloodied body on the floor, a grim question on his mind. He demanded to know what had happened to the child. The man wrung his hands nervously, apologizing to the honored guest. He suggested that since it was getting late, something must have happened to the child. He offered to bring another child instead. He recounted an old saying about buying a new sword, and how the first thing you cut determines your fortune. He added that some believed the greatest luck came from cutting down an entire family. The man in the red robes revealed that he had paid a fortune and ordered the parents and the child together. What meaning was there in cutting some other child, he wondered. The man with long brown hair realized that he had failed to recognize the other man's intent. He promised to quickly prepare another family for him. The man in red warned him that his patience was running thin. The man in the red robes lay on the ground, beaten. The man with long brown hair looked down at him with a questioning expression. The man in the red robes asked what the noise was. He apologized, saying that it seemed something had happened outside. He promised to call someone at once and have it checked. The door burst open as a man with long brown hair demanded to know what all the noise was. He sternly reminded everyone that they had an honored guest. Suddenly, a sword flashed, aimed directly at the man with long brown hair. The force of the blows sent him flying backwards, crashing through the air. The man in red robes looked down at the man he had just struck, who lay on the ground. He demanded to know what was going on. He was shocked by the speed of the attack. He hadn't even seen the sword strike and wondered if he was facing an incredible martial master. Meanwhile, the man with long brown hair stared intently, seemingly lost in thought. Mu Jin and the group had headed for the main building, where the children were said to be, but he decided to check the annex just in case. Suddenly, Mu Jin clutched his head as a sharp pain shot through him. He was experiencing a sudden headache. He groaned, overwhelmed by the intensity of the pain. Voices echoed in his mind, a cacophony of whispers and shouts. He heard a voice urging him to survive. A voice echoed in his mind, filled with a dark imperative. It told him that he had to kill. The voices intensified, and Mu Jin gripped his head, trying to fight off the invading thoughts. Words swirled around him, a relentless mantra that overwhelmed his senses. To survive, he had to kill. The man's vision blurred as the voice grew stronger, demanding that he kill to survive. The scene shifted to a flashback, as someone demanded the bald monk answer him. Grandmaster Hyunguang, with his long white beard, wondered why he had intervened so deeply into this. Monk Biab Gang told him not to worry so much. Hyunguang admitted he wasn't worried, just slightly concerned, thinking back to a time long ago. He recalled that Chung Su's first meeting with them wasn't exactly ordinary. It happened when Song Baek, a first-class disciple, was traveling through Jianghu. He recalled that Chung Su's first meeting with them wasn't exactly ordinary. Song Baek, a first-class disciple, had been traveling through Jianghu when he was ordered to chase down a band of mountain bandits. He heard a nearby village had been attacked, so he rushed there as fast as he could. He wondered what Song Baek saw when he arrived. The corpses of the bandits were piled up like a mountain. Sitting atop that pile was a child who barely even looked 10, with a chipped sword slung over his shoulder. He sat there tearing into a crow's carcass and eating it. They said he looked like a beast. Feeling pity for the child, Song Baek brought him back to Wudong, and they raised him, giving him the name Chung Su. Grandmaster Hyunguang thought about how the poor Chung Su had such a feast. He wondered if the Chung Su they knew now became gentle thanks to Wudong's teachings. It wasn't because of Wudong's teachings that Chung Su became gentle. He had already lost all of his memories from the very beginning, burying them himself after the traumatic experience. Grandmaster Hyunguang hoped that as Chung Su learned the principle of flow, the turmoil inside him would subside, even if only a little. He knew that this world wasn't made up of only beautiful things. He admitted that he was afraid. He worried that if Chung Su ended up going through something similar to what he experienced when he was young, the memories he buried might awaken and torment him once more. That was his small concern. The scene was a brutal display of violence. The man with dark hair stared down at the man in the red robe, who was desperately trying to explain himself. He insisted that he had nothing to do with this place, and had only come to investigate. The bloodied boots stood firm on the battle-mark-soaked floor. The man in the red robe offered money, promising to pay as much as the man with dark hair wanted if he would just let him go. He swore he would do anything he asked. The man in green robes desperately offered an artisan sword, claiming it was a peerless, legendary weapon made by a famous craftsman. Mu Jin's eyes glowed crimson. A dark voice echoed in his mind, commanding him to cut their heads off and plant fear in his enemies. Mu Jin was consumed by the need to kill so that he could live, refusing to die like a dog. The dark voice commanded Mu Jin to survive. Mu Jin woke up to find himself being carried. He heard someone asking if he had finally come to, and where they were. The man carrying him asked why he was on his back, and then exclaimed that Chung Su was awake. Mu Jin asked if he had been unconscious. The man carrying him confirmed that he had been out for nearly a full day. The man carrying Mu Jin asked if he felt any better, and if he should put him down. Mu Jin agreed. One of the men, Chung Su, exclaimed that he was awake. Another man also called out to Mu Jin. Mu Jin said that he was ashamed for causing them so much worry, and asked what exactly had happened to him. The man with the mohawk asked if he didn't remember anything, like splitting off from them in Gillen and coming to the annex building. Mu Jin repeated the word, the annex. Mu Jin clutched his head in pain, the mysterious voice still echoing in his mind. The man with the mohawk hairstyle suggested that Mu Jin rest a bit longer, stating that he planned to focus on moving for the children's sake. Mu Jin looked confused and asked about the children, and the man clarified that they were the children they rescued from the slave trader in Gillen. He explained that those who had somewhere to go had left, but most of the children who had nowhere to go had stayed with them. The man with the mohawk hairstyle explained that the Minor Azure sect had agreed to take in the rescued children. Mu Jin looked at the man with the mohawk hairstyle, who suggested they discuss everything that happened after he had rested more. The man assured Mu Jin he should focus on recovering for now, thanking him for his kindness. The man with the mohawk hairstyle stood before a tall figure, his expression unreadable. Mu Jin considered the situation. There were a lot of things he wanted to ask Chung Su. He thought back to the horrific scene he saw at the annex because Chung Su hadn't shown up at their meeting place. The traces of slaughter were nothing like what the Chung Su he knew would do. But right now, it felt like Chung Su needed some time alone. And honestly, so did he. Only the hardest part of the Qian-Gangxi province plan remained, to recruit Baek Gaowen, the strategist. Mu Jin knew that Baek Gaowen, the hidden dragon, had guided Du Wulchen, the protagonist of Unorthodox Tyrant Chronicles, to become the number one of the unorthodox sects, and the kingmaker of Murim. From an outside perspective, he was the intelligence-type overpowered character designed to compensate for what Du Wulchen lacked. In the strategic battles with New Heavens that were coming, his presence was absolutely essential. However, there was one problem that made this difficult. In Unorthodox Tyrant Chronicles, there was almost no description of Baek Gaowen during this period because Baek Gaowen wasn't the protagonist of Unorthodox Tyrant Chronicles. The only thing Mu Jin could infer was that Baek Gaowen was with his sick younger sister in the Minor Azure sect. Mu Jin knew that the most important final step of the entire plan was in one shot, on-the-spot gamble where he couldn't predict the outcome. He was now in Guangxi province at the Minor Azure sect. He spotted them and called out, telling Mu Hyung that he saw them and to come down now. He steeled himself for what was to come. Mu Jin knew that from here on out, it all began. He was about to engage in a battle of wits to recruit the strategist Baek Gaowen, where he couldn't see even 1 inch ahead. Mu Jin arrived at the Gillen Minor Azure sect. He pounded on the door, demanding to know if anyone was inside. A nervous voice responded from within. The man behind the door asked what business he had with the Minor Azure sect, adding that they didn't accept outsiders lightly, and apologized. The man with dark red hair claimed that they were physicians from Sichuan. He added that they had heard of the Minor Azure sect's reputation and had come to find them, saying they were told that the sect takes in children who have nowhere to go. The man with the hat explained that these children were gathered from nearby and had no home, asking if they could entrust them to the Minor Azure sect. The man behind the door expressed his surprise that they were physicians who had come to entrust children to them. The man behind the door welcomed them to the Minor Azure sect, saying they would open the gate for them. Mu Jin thought to himself that this was the only sect left in this unorthodox region and that since arriving in Guangxi, this was the first time he had felt relieved. The man with dark red hair declared that Mu Jin had arrived at the perfect time, as they were in a difficult situation. Mu Jin asked what the difficult situation was. The man with long hair explained that Guangxi province was unorthodox territory. Because of that, the Minor Azure sect had been given a special mission by the Murim Alliance. Mu Jin asked if he was allowed to hear what the special mission was. The man with long hair chuckled and told him not to misunderstand, as it wasn't such a grand mission. He explained that it was simply the task of gathering children in Guangxi and sending them to Hunan province. The man with dark red hair was surprised by the Murim Alliance's orders. He explained that children who grew up in Guangxi usually ended up sold as slaves or became members of bandit gangs or raider groups. The Murim Alliance decided to take preventative measures rather than let them become villains. The man with long dark hair explained that the Minor Azure sect was the only orthodox sect in Guangxi province, so the task of gathering children had fallen entirely on them. Mu Jin asked what the difficult situation was. The man with long black hair explained that some time ago, a plague began spreading among the children they were protecting. He continued, explaining that about 2 months prior, the children began showing unexplained high fevers and rashes. All they could do was isolate them in the building. He admitted it was shameless to ask, but wondered if the physicians would be willing to take a look at the children. The 2 men, faces covered, noticed a foul smell emanating from the building. He spotted a man's leg covered in rashes blocking the doorway. The hooded man insisted that they couldn't come in, as the illness could spread, and no one had recovered from the plague yet. Another man observed the rashes on the hooded man's body, confirming they matched the descriptions they'd heard. He wondered what Mu Jin was trying to do, since they weren't real physicians. The hooded man insisted that if there was any improvement, he would come to inform them. He asked them to turn back, as it was dangerous. The 2 men hesitated, before one of them blurted out Mu Jin's name. The hooded figure visibly reacted to his name being called. He stated that they were not from the Minor Azure sect. The man with dark hair and a mask covering his face stated that they were physicians from another region. They had stopped by the Minor Azure sect briefly to entrust some children to them, but they had heard there were patients, and came to take a look. The hooded figure looked up at him in shock, asking if he had brought children here. The masked man's eyes widened in surprise. The hooded figure reached out and grabbed the man's arm, telling him that he needed to listen carefully to what they were about to say. The man with dark hair and a mask was shocked to see the skin under the mask was clean. The hooded figure pulled down the mask, revealing their face. They urged him to take the children and leave the place immediately. The hooded figure stated that the Minor Azure sect was not the kind of sect he thought it was. The man looked distraught by the revelation. The man with dark hair felt that day's memories were hazy, as though they were covered in fog. He realized the stickiness of murderous intent and resentment solidified into something tangible, and it still remained in his hands. He wondered what the hell this was and how he could erase something like this. He then heard someone tell him to come that way. He was told to go with the person in front of him. He recognized the man as the minor apprentice sect leader they had met earlier, and noticed one of his disciples was with him. The man with dark hair watched as a child was escorted away. One of the figures wondered if that child was one of the children they had brought. The figure questioned why they were only taking that child away without a word. They watched as the figures continued to walk away. Mu Jin felt that something was off about this situation. He wondered where they were taking him. The scene shifts to the tiled rooftops of the Gillen Minor Azure sect. A young boy sat alone on the steps, looking distressed. He wondered why his mom and dad were out here alone. Mu Jin stood before the child, noticing his worried expression. He asked if something was worrying him. The boy looked away, trying to hide his concern. He insisted that it was nothing, before Mu Jin asked if he wanted to see his parents. The young boy looked up at Mu Jin, a confused expression on his face. Mu Jin offered to help him see his parents. The boy nodded, agreeing to the offer. Suddenly, the hooded figure warned Mu Jin that the Minor Azure sect wasn't what he thought it was. Mu Jin was shocked and questioned the hooded figure. He asked why they were pretending to be sick. The hooded figure explained that it was an act to keep the Minor Azure sect's people from approaching, a temporary disguise that would eventually be discovered. The hooded figure revealed that the Minor Azure sect was known to be protecting children under the orders of the Murim Alliance, but that wasn't true at all. They explained that the sect spread plausible rumors, and when someone brought a child there, they looted that person, and the child was eventually sold off elsewhere, calling it a trap. The hooded figure, with a look of desperation, told him that they had circumstances that prevented them from leaving the place, but it wasn't too late for Mu Jin. The man mused to himself about how boldly the hooded figure was swindling adults. He realized that if a kid this smart had stayed here instead of running away long ago, there was no doubt about it. This kid was Baek Gawan. He figured that the circumstances the hooded figure had mentioned must be referring to his little sister, Baek Garyong, who was sick and couldn't move, confirming that he really was here. Mu Jin adjusted his collar, declaring that they weren't going to run away on their own. He grinned, reassuring the hooded figure not to worry, because they would take it from here. Mu Jin and the hooded figure arrived at a destination. The hooded figure asked if their parents were inside, and Mu Jin confirmed that they would be able to meet them if they went inside. The man with long hair reached for the door, asking if they should go in. Suddenly, the boy with white hair looked shocked, his eyes widening in alarm. The door opened to reveal a gruesome scene. A room filled with hanging meat and a butcher's table. The man with long hair and the boy stared into the room, the horrifying reality of the situation becoming clear. The boy with white hair looked on in horror, as the man with long hair ominously stated that he would let him meet his parents. The boy with white hair screamed and ran as fast as he could, desperate to escape the gruesome scene. But before he could get away, the man with long hair grabbed him by the neck, stopping him in his tracks. The man with long hair tightened his grip, choking the boy with white hair until he coughed, struggling to breathe. The man with long hair tightened his grip on the boy's neck, cleaver in hand. He asked where the boy thought he was going. The boy gasped in terror as the man ominously told him that he had said he wanted to see his parents. He explained that the meat had been stored up sick, so they hadn't been able to eat it for 2 months. He asked if the boy had any idea how much everyone had been holding back. He grinned, telling the boy that just like he wished, they would send him to his parents' side, but they would use him a little first. The boy pleaded with him to spare him. Man with long hair raised his cleaver high, telling the boy that they would have to share the meat nicely. The boy screamed in terror, desperately raising his arm to block the incoming blow. Suddenly, the man's eyes widened in disbelief. A figure in white robes intervened, slashing through the air with a sword. The man with long brown hair glared up at his opponent, his face a mask of determination. He could only watch as the cleavers descended towards him. Man with long dark hair looked down at him, unimpressed. He told him that he had a chance to run away, but he let it slip over a mere chunk of meat, calling him soft. The man with brown hair stood tall, his sword gleaming in the light. The man with long brown hair glared at his opponent, accusing them of abandoning basic human decency and using a child as a shield. He questioned how they could call themselves an orthodox sect when they did such things. The man with long dark hair grinned, finding his words stupid. He revealed that they were not the Minor Azure sect, but the Mad Demon Bandits, a bandit group that had made a name for itself around Guangzhou. The bandit leader explained that they had reasons to move their territory to Guangxi province, and were looking for a place to stay in the area. Man with long dark hair continued his story, explaining that they had found an orthodox sect and immediately approached them disguised as a merchant guild. He said all they had to do was claim they were attacked by the Green Forest bandits and needed help, and those idiots believed every word. As repayment, they drugged their food and attacked them at night, offering no resistance at all. Since then, they had been pretending to be the Minor Azure sect for 10 years. He laughed, saying those idiots were so naive, and now they were being lectured about being an orthodox sect. The man's grip tightened around the sword. Mu Jin's eyes burned with fury as he declared that they were bastards not worth sparing, nothing but animals. Meanwhile, the man with long black hair held a knife to a child's neck, warning others not to move, as he might accidentally kill the child if startled. Mu Jin sneered, calling him a coward and telling him that animals didn't even know what cowardice was. The man sneered, revealing that he had sent Mu Jin's friends a little gift, food laced with paralysis poison. One of the men looked up, surprised by the mention of food. Another man confirmed that their sect leader had ordered them to deliver it, as it was only natural to repay honored guests for their help, asking them not to refuse their sincerity, and to thank their sect leader on their behalf. The men in dark uniforms then turned and walked away, leaving the food behind. The shadow loomed over the building as the hooded figure questioned if everything would be alright.